This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone. This is our first introduction class we are going to discuss here. So, basically, the agenda here, what exactly we are going to cover here. So, initially, we'll come up with the core Java, and later, we'll try to come up with the Spring. And once we familiar with the Spring, we'll move on to the Spring Boot, and later we'll move on to the microservices. So this is the way we'll try to move on to the our day-to-day sessions here. So in the initial days, we'll try to focus more onto the core Java concepts here, and once we are completed, we'll move on to the Spring. Okay, inside the core Java, first what we will do, we'll have a basic information. So what exactly, like who is the author of this particular core Java, and when this particular core Java is implemented. Okay, so for this information, I implemented some notes here. So this is we'll try to understand here. If you see, so these are all the five people they introduced the ever Java language here. Getting the point. So how many people we are having? So observe carefully. James and Patrick. So Cherries and Ed Frank and Mike. So these are all the five people. They are introduced our Java language and they started in the 1991. Getting the pen. So it started around 1991. It's taken around 18 months. The initial version. So the initial version called 1.0. It's taken around 18 months to develop here. And initially they used to call the Java language name called Oak. So initially they come up with a different name that is called Oak. And later, so in the 1995, it is renamed to our Java language here. Okay, so this is the basic information. So who is implemented this and when it is implemented and how many months it's taken to introduce our initial version. Getting the one. So this is 1.0. It's taken around how many months? It's taken around 18 months. So later they come up with a different information. So based on the some other people involved into this, and they introduce the 1.1 here. Getting the point. So based on some drawbacks in the 1.0, so they come up with a 1.1. So same way, like they introduce the 1.2 and 1.3, right? And 1.4. So like they started so introducing the new version. So basically, so what is the difference between 1.1 and 1.2 or 1.1 and 1.0? So basically, whenever we are trying to add any new features, so we cannot come up with in the existing version. So we need to come up with the new version. So basically, what happens here? So Java is already available 1.0. Getting the point. If it is available inside the 1.0, now what I'm doing is, so using this particular existing library, I'm going to add new functionality. So for example, I added two classes. Just understanding here, I'm added two classes. So whenever I'm trying to add this particular two classes, now what happens here? We are going to rebuild this 1.0 version, and once we rebuild this, now what happens internally? So this particular Java language, we are going to introduce as a exe file. Getting the point? Exe file. So the exe file contains here our Java libraries here. Could you please let me know anyone having a same problem? Cannot hear. Only one person having, or I think only one person is having issue. Uh, I don't know his name. Vip, can you like enable your audio option? So basically, you did not enable your audio option here, so you need to enable. Okay. So back to here. Now, what we need to understand here. Basically, the Java libraries in the Java library will come up with the exe files. So once this particular exe file is downloaded, so for example, 1.0 the 1.0 version is available now. Two machines are implemented, sorry, two machines are downloaded this particular exe files. So this exe, while downloading this exe, what is the version they contain here? 1.0. Getting the point? In the two systems here, they're having 1.0. Now what I'm doing here inside the 1.0, so I added two extra classes here. Getting the point? I added two extra classes. So these two extra classes cannot available inside these two monitors here, like inside this particular two system. Why? Because they are working on the exe files. Getting the point? So they are working on the exe file. So they cannot contain the latest changes here. So they can contain only up to the what are all the version information we are having. So to get the latest changes, now what we need, so they need to move on to the 1.1 version. They need to move on to the 1.1 versions. So now instead of instead of installing the 1.0, now what they will do, so they will uninstall the 1.0, they will come up with the 1.1. This 1.1 can contain along with the 1.0 features as well as the additional features what they added earlier. Getting the point? So this is a way each versions are implemented here. This is the way the each versions are implemented. Now observe. So based on the each version, they come up with the new functionality. They is to add it each and every new functionality into the new version. Right. So this is we understand now. So right now, so we'll try to cover up around 1.8 version. So we'll try to cover up the 1.8 version. So what are all the different changes we are having? So who is the person? Okay. Now observe carefully. Up to 1.8, we are going to discuss what are all the different changes we are having inside the each version. So let me clear this. Okay, now back to here. Now we identified, so these are all the five people is implemented our Java language, and initially it's taken around 18 months, and the first version we are calling as a 1.0. And so we'll move on to the features. So what are all the basic feature we are having? So basically, before going to discuss about the feature, first what we need. So basically, Java is copy the some basic syntax from the C, and the object oriented features they copied from the our C++ language. So this we need to understand very carefully. So whatever the syntax we have already identified in the C language, so it's copy some syntaxes here. And the same way, the object oriented principles, like how the object oriented is going to work in the C++, same the object oriented principles are copied into the so our Java language. So don't worry. So if you're not having the much experience on the C and C++, we are going to discuss about the syntaxes and object oriented features here. Okay, so this is just I want to give the basic information about the syntaxes and object oriented. And now what we need to understand here, features. Basically Java is one of the simple language. So how we are going to call Java is one of the simple language. Now if you know the basic syntaxes, once we are familiar with the basic syntaxes, we can easily implement any program, or we can implement with any applications here. Because if you see all the applications, so what are all the web application we are having, big applications like e-commerce applications or banking applications or financial application, all are implemented inside the Java language. Getting the point? So now you can see, once you are familiar with the syntaxes, we can easily implement any kind of application. So we'll try to focus more about the syntaxes, how it is going to work, and secure. So secure, basically it will come up with a JVM, and JVM internally it's going to use bytecode here. Getting the point? So JVM, so JVM will take care of the conversion here. Basically, we are going to write the Java language, and the language is converted into the operating system readable format. So whatever the operating system we are going to work, so based on the operating system readable, it will convert the bytecode here. So we'll understand more information about the JVM and bytecode, how it is going to work. So once we are familiar with the simple example here. Okay, and now portable here. So basically how this particular portable is going to work. So to understand this particular portable, now what we need here, see, once we develop the any application, so today we are going to develop the application, and tomorrow, day after tomorrow, if we update, getting the point, if we update something, now what happens internally? So even though if the operating system is updated, so we don't want to get any exception, whatever the application we developed it with the earlier version. Getting the point? So everything is going to take care by the this particular JVM. So JVM internally, what it will do, again, based on the latest version of the operating system, it will try to compile the one more time the same application here. So once it is compiled, now what happens here, it will regenerate the bytecodes here. So once it is regenerated the bytecode, now what happens internally? So we can easily communicate with the latest operating systems here. So this is the very important feature we have. That is, we are going to call it as a portability. Okay, now what we can understand here, so object oriented basically what we can understand, if you are going to write anything inside the Java language, so we come up with the objects here. So right now you are not going to get much thing about the object oriented, because if I want to write simple program, if I want to write simple any logical example or logical program, now what happens internally, so we used to come up with the object creation. The object creation, how we are going to write that, we are going to discuss in our upcoming classes here. Okay, so this, the object oriented robust is nothing but strong applications. So we can easily develop the strong application with the help of this particular Java language here. So this is all about the some of the features we are having, and multi-threading and architectural neutral. So basically what we exactly it is contains here, so we can come up with multiple users, so we can give the option to the multiple users allowed to the our application. So for example, we have one of the e-commerce application, one offer is going on. So now when the offer is going on, now what happens here, so we doesn't know how many users are going to communicate with our application. So in that case, now what we need to do, so we need to give the same response to the each and every user, or the unique response we need to give to the each and every user here. So basically, how many requests we received here, based on the request here, what exactly the user is searching, and the same information we need to provide. We cannot provide the common information to the all the users here. So this kind of information we are going to achieve with the help of this particular multi-threading here. Getting the point? So this is very important here. So same way, architecture also one of the important feature. It's like a, this is also same like operating systems information here. So based on the operating system here, so if you run the operating example with a different operating system, so for example, I implemented the program in the Windows. Getting the point? Implemented the program in the Windows here. Now what I'm doing here, the same program I'm going to run in the Linux or in the different operating system here. But even though if I'm trying to run the same application in the different operating system, we are not going to get any exception here. Getting the point? Again, why we are not going to get any exception? It's because of JVM. So JVM basically is a platform dependent. Wherever we are trying to work with the operating system, wherever we are trying to work with operating system, now what happens internally, so download the we used to download the our Java libraries. So the Java libraries can contain internally JVM. Getting the point? The JVM will take care of you handling the different operating systems. Okay, so these are about the simple features we are having inside this particular Java language here. And now observe carefully, these are all the version updates here. These are all the latest version what we have, and what are all the each and every version contains some additional information. Now if you observe carefully, so 1.0 and 1.1, we don't have a much updates here. Getting the point? Because internally, so we don't have initial version, they did not provide the much important concept here inside the 1.0 and 1.1. Now so when they are trying to introduce the 1.2, basically they renamed the library name calling here. So if you see, so they used to call the J2SE. J2SE is nothing but Java 2 Platform Standard Edition here. So in the 1.1 and 1.0, so they are calling Java only. They are calling Java 1.0 or 1.1. 1.1. But when they are trying to introduce the 1.2, now they rename it to J2SE. Getting the point? So this is important. So J2S is nothing but Java 2, the platform standard edition here. And what exactly the Java 2 standard edition we are having here? So we don't have much information here. So only the simple information. They remove these three methods here. Getting the point? These three methods are implemented 1.0 and 1.1. In the 1.2, they removed this particular suspended, resume, and stop method from the our third class here. So we'll see how this particular third class is going to work here. Okay, and what is the another information? So 1.3 and 1.4. So in the 1.4, they come up with some exception information and input output streams here. So we'll see what exactly the input stream and output stream and exception information. Okay, but you can see in the 1.3 we don't have a much the important things here. So they implemented the internal changes here, but they did not added any new functionality to the 1.3 version here. So even though if we are trying to modify the existing features also, we need to come up with a new version. So whenever we are trying to come up with a new version, what happens here? Because the Java is going to run the multiple systems here, like multiple the like what we can call it as a machines. So whenever the Java is going to run the multiple machines here, if you are not updating the version, now what happens here? The latest changes is not going to reflected into the all the machines here. So in that case, we should release the each and every version with the help of your latest changes here. Okay. Now observe carefully. So 1.3 we have a internal changes. 1.4 we are having some exception information as well as input and output stream changes here. And now you can see so 1.5. So this is the big version changes here. So 1.5 as well as 1.8. These two are the big changes here. Now, what we will do, first we'll understand the 1.5. What are all the big changes we are having? First one is generic. So when they added the generic here, the entire up to the 1.4, what are all the information is implemented inside the language. So it is re-implemented. Getting the point? So the all the classes and all the interfaces are re-implemented here. Why it is re-implemented? Because we come up with one of the important concept called generics. So basically generic will give you the dynamic input and dynamic outputs here. So instead of coming with a static here, so we are going to come up with a dynamic resolution here. So we'll see how this particular generic is going to work. So and this is the one of the biggest information we need to learn, the generic concept here. And another one, annotations. Because if you know the little bit of annotations in the core Java, we can easily understand about the annotations which are coming inside the Spring and Spring Boot related. Okay, so this is we need to understand the annotation, auto boxing and auto unboxing here. Basically these two are the conversion here, one object into the another object is how it is going to convert here. So these two we are going to discuss once we are familiar with the basic syntaxes here. And varchar concept here. So varchar concept is nothing but we are going to add method to the parameter. So this particular varchar will take care of the, so from one parameter to the 100 parameters here. So instead of statically defined, so once we define the varchar concept here, we can pass 100 method as a parameter, or we can pass only one parameter as a method here. So this is we'll see. And static import and enumerations. So they come up with the enum related information 1.2y 1.5 version onwards here. So this is the basic the new versions they added inside the 1.5. Okay, so this is the very important information we need to understand here, 1.5. And now you can see, so Java SE7, if you observe carefully, so up to the 1.6, they are calling J2SE, and when they are calling 7 version, they rename it to the Java SE7, Java SE. But up to the 1.6, what they implemented, they used to come up with the J2SE only. Getting the point? They used to come up with the J2SE. Up to 1.6, so this is implemented by the Sun Microsystem here. Getting the point? Sun Microsystem, and here and 1.7 is implemented by the Oracle. Getting the point? So Oracle is the first version is implemented as a 7 version, and up to the 1.6 is implemented by the Sun Microsystem here. Okay, this is we need to understand very carefully. And once Oracle Corporation is hand over the Java, now they rename it to the naming convention Java Standard Edition. Getting the point? Java Standard Edition. And now this is the first version is introduced by the Oracle Corporation. And what we are having it, so they come up with the switch case and the numeric types here, and they come up with the try with the resource. So basically, it is nothing but multiple catches here. So we can add multiple catch blocks here. So basically, if you know the basic information about the exception handling, we can easily understand here how we can come up with this particular multiple catches here. Okay, so we'll see how this particular multiple catches is going to work. And final one, Java SE 8 here. The Java SE 8 is the second version is introduced by the Oracle Corporation here. Okay, and they come up with a different information like Lambda expression, stream API, so something like util package, and default implementation, functional interfaces. Getting the point? So here we have a something like a static related informations we have static imports and static methods. Like getting the point. So static implementation and default implementation. So these default and static we are going to write under the interface here, not under the classes section here. So we'll see how exactly the default and static implementation is going to work under the interface section. So these are all the features and versions information we have inside this particular Java language here. Okay. So any questions? Okay. So if we don't have anything,
Sir, I have a question here. So, why was it called J2SC and then J Java SE?
see, basically, this is implemented by the Oracle Corporation. So they only provided the naming convention. And up to this section, they is to implemented by the Sun Microsystem. Because initially, these five people are working under the Sun Microsystem Corporation here. So this is the another organization, and this is the another organization because the Java is handed over to the Oracle corporations here. Now the Java is working under the Oracle Corporation, not under the Sun Microsystem. Once it is handed over, they renamed this naming convention. So they did not satisfy the whatever the name is provided by the Sun Microsystem J2SC. So they come up with a different naming convention.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So any other questions? Okay. So if we don't have anything, now what we will do? So we'll move on to the simple example here. So to understand this particular simple example, so this is the simple example we discussed previously. So now what we are going to do, so basically whenever we are trying to write any example in the Java, so we need to write the keyword called class. So basically what it will do, this particular class is going to provide the basic information and what is the name of the class. Because if you write any program or any application in the Java, it should start with the class. Without the class we are not going to write single line of code here. So now you can see how much this particular class is important here. Getting the point? How much this particular class is important. Now observe carefully. What is the name of the class I given? That is called example I given. And now we need to understand regarding this particular main method. So basically the main method, what happens internally? What happens internally? This is the first executable statement. Once it is this main method is executed, after the main method, whatever the code you are going to write, the particular code is going to execute it here. So right now I'm not going to write any code here. So simply I'm trying to write one println statement because just we need to understand here how it is going to work. So later we can move on to the something like a different example here. Okay, now what I'm writing here, so simple message I'm trying to write. I'm not going to write much code here. So observe carefully now what I'm doing is, if you see what is the name of the class we are providing, example, and we come up with a main method and internally, so I'm not writing much code, just I'm writing the single line. So whatever the line is providing here, so this is the one class we have a system and out is a reference variable. So right now we don't have much idea about the reference variable. So variable basically, so it's contain the object information. Getting the point? It's contain the object information where the object is located and what what exactly the object will contain here. Getting the point? And with the help of this particular out reference, now what I'm doing it, I'm trying to call the one method called println. So let me open meanwhile this ID also. We'll see how this class is going to work. Okay. So now before going to discuss about this particular line, now we need to understand their main method. So why we need to add this particular main method here? Okay. So without adding the main method, what happens internally? So basically, so if we are trying to write anything, the main method is very important because this particular main method is going to execute from the JVM. Getting the point. This main method is going to execute from the JVM. So once the JVM is going to call the main method, and once it is called, whatever the lines of code we are writing under the main method, it will try to execute. So right now, how many lines of code we define? Only one line here. So what exactly the line contain? It will try to print the message. Where exactly the message is going to print? It's going to print on the console. So console is nothing but if you run from the command line, it will print on the command line, or if you try to run any IDE, it will print on the same message on our console here. Okay, so we'll see how exactly this particular println method is going to work. Okay, why we need to provide here? Because inside the JVM we have a main method. So the JVM is going to call this particular main method. How it is going to call? We need to understand these three keywords here. Getting the point? We need to understand these three keywords. So one keyword we come up with the public. So what happens here if I'm not adding the public? Getting the point? Because so Java, if you observe carefully, this example is created in the different directory and JVM will available inside the different directory. Okay, so how we are going to have a communication here? Getting the point? How we are going to have a communication if you remove this particular public here? Basically, public is nothing but we are giving an option to execute any location from any location here. So if I'm not adding this public, if I will add a private, now what happens internally? So this main method is going to execute within this particular class. So the scope here, you can see this brace is open and this brace is closed here. Within this particular class only, the main method is going to execute here. Okay, so here we are trying to restrict something here. So and here, so as I explained, the main method is going to call from the JVM. So we don't want to use this particular private. So we need to come up with a public here. So if I'm adding this particular private, now what happens internally? We'll try to execute this simple example. We'll understand here. So where it is contained. So CMD Java C, and what is the name of the file name we given? Something like example.java. So it is compiled successfully and the Java example. Now you can see what is the error we are getting here? Main method not found in the class called example. So why we are getting this particular error? What is the syntax we need to follow? You can see, so it's giving a suggestion also. Please define the main method as public static void main string x. Why we need to define the same as this? Because this the same syntax we implemented inside the JVM. Getting the point? The same syntax we implemented inside this particular JVM. So now we understand here. So why this public is important here? Because it is going to access from the outside of this particular class. And what about this particular static? So basically, if this particular static is not available, so where this particular main method is calling it? Inside the JVM. So once it is calling from the JVM, now if I want to call this particular main method, now what we need? We need to create an object of this particular example here. Getting the point? So you can see this is the JVM we are having, okay, and this is the lines of code we are having. So for example, something like line number 32, so we are calling main method. This is the internal code I'm trying to explain here. This is the main method we are calling here, and once it is calling here, once we are trying to call from here, now what happens internally? This main method is going to execute it here. Right. So whenever this particular main method is going to execute it here, now what happens internally? We are going to execute the line number 3 statement. But what we need to understand here, if I'm not having this particular static, how we are going to call this particular main method? The main method is going to call like this. First, we are going to create the object. Example. Example is our name of the file, or we can call it as a name of the class. Based on this particular name of the class, we are going to create an object. So simple, this is the way we are going to create. Example ex1 is equals to new. New is the keyword. It will try to create an object here, and this is the constructor. This is the constructor. Example is the one constructor. So we'll discuss about this particular constructor later. Just understand here this particular line. Example ex1 is equals to new example. Now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to create a one object. Which object I'm creating? The example object I'm creating. Once we create this particular example object here, now what I'm doing here? So with help of the reference, what is the reference here? This is the reference here, ex1. ex1 is the reference. So why we need to add this particular ex1 here? Now what happens here if I'm not adding this? Basically, this ex1, it's going to hold in the heap memory. So observe carefully. This is the heap memory. Inside the heap memory, ex1 will pointing to like this. So here ex1 will hold here. So ex1 will contain how many information? The example class information. So now what I'm doing here, with help of this particular ex1 dot, now I'm calling main method. Okay, so ex1 is the reference variable of which class? Something like example. And ex1 dot main, ex1 dot main, directly we are calling this particular main here. Directly we are calling this particular main. Okay, so this is the way we need to create an object, and we can call the same method under the JVM. This operation, this line where we need to write, this line we need to write under this particular JVM, not the explicitly. Getting the point? So why we need to write here? Because of, if I'm not having this particular static, if I'm not having this particular static here, so carefully observe, if this particular static is no longer available, how many lines of code we need to write? How many lines of code we need to write internally? So we need to write first example. Example is one object we need to create here. Okay, and with help of this particular reference, we need to call the main method. Getting the point? We need to call the main method. This is important. These two lines of statement we need to write under the JVM. And here, one more thing we need to understand. So only for calling this particular main method, now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to create a one object here. So once we create an object, where this object is residing, this object is going to store under the JVM. Sorry, under the heap memory. Getting the point? So here, ex1 is equals to new. New is a keyword. What exactly it will do? It will create an object of this particular example. So if you see, this is the heap memory, and here the ex1 will contain here is nothing but we are increasing the our heap memory size, just calling the main method. Getting the point? So just we are calling the main method, that's it. We are not going to do any changes here. Okay, so if you observe carefully, this is the line number, this is the line number, imagine 32. In the line number 32, now what we are doing here, we are trying to call the main method. Once this particular main method is completed, it will print this message. After this, it will back to the line number 33. So once the line number 33, it's come back inside the JVM. So are we are going to do anything with the help of this particular object here? We are not going to do anything here. Get in the point? We are not going to do with this particular object here. Just we are calling this. So just for calling purpose, we are creating an object. So instead of creating object and calling the method, now what is the best option here? So the best option is static. So static, what it will do, it's not going to create an object like this. It's not going to create an object like this, and it will not store any object inside the heap memory. Directly in the line number 32 itself here, it will call the example. What is the example here? Example is our name of the particular class. And here example dot main. Getting the point? So dot is very important here. This will differentiate the name of the file and the method here. Getting the point? So this is the method we are having, something like main method, and this is the class name. So class name dot method name. Whenever we are calling like this, now what happens internally? Again, it will call the same main method. So here we are not creating an object, we are not increasing the heap memory size. So this is a way we can reduce the the memory information here. Okay, so this is the purpose of this particular static. So static basically with help of the name of the class name, we can call the particular method here. So the what is the name of the method we are having? Main. Okay, so the static is clear. Now what I'm doing here, void here. Basically void, what exactly it is contained. So as I explained here, the line number 33, it is calling the main method. Once it is called, it will come back to the line number 34. Basically inside the Java, it will execute the line by line. So first, second, third. Once its second is executed, it move on to the third. Once the third is completed, it will move on to the fourth. Same way, 33 is executed, it will come back to the 34. So imagine if this particular main method is returning some value. For example, it's returning some 40 value. Okay. So here from the line number 3, we are trying to return some 40 value. So inside the JVM, what it will do this 40 value? Getting the point. So JVM is not going to do any other operation with this particular 40 value. The 40 value is written by this particular main method. The 40 value is written by this particular main method here. Getting the point. So instead of returning this, now what we can do, we can make as a void. So once we make any method as a void here, now what happens internally? The particular method is not going to return any value. So this is the particular purpose of this particular void. And main is the name of the method name. Getting the point. Main is a method name, and main method is expecting one parameter that is called string, and it can hold multiple values. The type we are providing as a string, it can hold multiple values here. Okay, so this we'll see. So before going to discuss about the parameter, any questions? Any questions regarding our public, static, and void?
Sir, I have a question. So when you wrote private instead of public for the main method, the compiler did not return any error. It compiled successfully. So, and how is that possible?
See, basically, if you miss any syntax, compiler will provide the error. So for example, if I miss something semicolon here, or if I miss, okay, first we'll see this semicolon. Now you can see it's giving it compile time only. So compiler will give you only if you miss any syntax, it will give you an error. But here it is not a syntax mismatch. So whatever the keyword we provide, private is the one keyword. So we can use the private keyword. But only the problem here, the main method is whenever we are trying to call the main method, we need to follow the syntax that we are not following here, because the JVM cannot identify so whether you are defining the main method or not. Because if you define the main method with a different format here, JVM cannot identify. Whatever the same format we are using right now, we should follow the same way. At runtime, JVM could not identify the main method. It's because of that we get an exception.
Okay. Yeah, I got it. Thank you. And then I have another question. So, we used void keyword in the main method, but we're writing a println line. Welcome to Java. That means it is returning a line, right? So, how is that
Yeah.
possible?
So for that, I think, let's see. Let me open this IDE. Okay, so I will explain your question. So because ID is taking some time. Okay, now any other questions other than this particular println? Okay, so if not, what I will do? Okay, so this is the system class. Now you can see public class system. So just ignore this final right now. So we'll discuss about the final later. But now observe carefully. This is the system class we are using here. So system, and again we are coming with the out. So if you go to this, here we can identify out where it is defined. This is an out. Okay, so out is a reference variable of type. What is the type it is containing here? It is called print string. Now observe carefully why we are using the static here and why we are using the public. Getting the point. So public, basically we are going to access outside of this particular system class. Getting the point. If I'm making the private within this particular system class only, we are going to access this particular out variable. But here, what is the access we are providing? Public. So we can access from any location. And what about this particular static here? How we are accessing this particular variable here? So carefully observe. Here, system is a class name. Earlier, how we are calling this particular main method here? How we are calling with the help of this particular class name? Example dot main. Example dot main. Example is the name of the file, or we can call it as the name of the class, and main is the name of the method. Same way, system is also one class, and out is a one reference variable. Getting the point? Because we provided as a static. If I'm not providing the static, how we are going to access this particular out here? Again, we'll create an object. How we are going to create an object here? Something like system s1 is equals to new system. Getting the point? S1 dot out. But you are not doing any s1 dot out, these two statements here. Getting the point? How we are calling? System dot out, because out is having the behavior of static here. So once it is having the static behavior, directly we can call with help of the class name. Directly we can call the name of the class name. Now if you see, so here it is having the static, so we are able to call the out. And inside this particular print stream, now println. Okay, so what we are passing? Println, we are passing string. Now this println is returning anything? No, is not returning anything. But internally, what we are doing? If I'm calling this particular println, now if you see, so again we are calling the print method, and we are calling new line. So what exactly the print is doing here? So you can see write method internally it is calling. Getting the point? So write is nothing but we are going to write whatever the message we are providing, the message on our console. Getting the point? So if the println method is not returning anything, but internally we are we are printing something, whatever we passing to the appropriate method. So if you see, so here println method is expecting one parameter, string x. String is a data type, x is a variable. The value, whatever the value we are going to provide, the value is going to hold inside this particular x, not inside this particular string. The string is defining only what kind of value we can pass. What kind of value we can pass. Same way, if you see, this is also string. This string is defining the data type, and whatever we are going to pass, it will pass inside this particular test array. Getting the point? So the values are going to store inside this particular test, not inside this particular test. Okay, now observe println. So println, we are passing this particular string. This entire string, whatever the highlighted, this particular entire string is going to store inside this particular x variable. Right. So what we are doing internally, again, we are calling one more method, the print method. And once we call this particular print method, we are calling one more write method. And with help of this particular write, so we are printing here. So test.out. Basically, these are all the print stream related files here. It will try to print the whatever the message we are adding. So right now, we cannot understand what exactly it is discussing right now. So once we familiar some basics in example, so we can easily understand what exactly it contains here. Okay, so any questions regarding this println?
So, uh, so you are telling that, in my understanding, if I'm wrong, please tell me. So, if you want to print something, you should write void. Void means if you want to print anything, and if you want to return anything, you can't write void. Am I correct?
See, printing is different, so don't compare with the print and void.
Okay.
Okay, so basically void, we if we want to write like we are not interested to return anything, we can go for the void. Okay, print is nothing but if we want to print something in console or in file, and wherever we want to know what is then exactly the output, whether the line is executed. So just it's like a information. So if we want to find out some information, we can come up with the print and we can see. So for example, in the line number 3, now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to write something like, so line 3 is executed. Okay, now what we can understand, once it is printed, so we can easily understand here the line number 3 is executed whenever we are calling this particular main method. Okay, same way we can come up with some debug related information. Or if you want to store some information in our file or any other location, you can use the same println. We can push the messages whatever we want to store inside the file. Okay, this is different. But void and some return values are different, because the void we are going to use the method level if I'm not interested to return something. Okay, is it clear? Okay, now observe carefully. So we need to move on to this particular section here so that we will know the entire main method, the syntax information here. Okay, to understand this, first what we need. Basically, this parameter is going to load the data from the command line arguments here. Getting the pen? It's going to load the data from the command line arguments here. So now, so we'll keep as it is here. So now finally what I'm doing here, I'm going to write one more println statement here. And inside this particular println statement here, so, so test 0 I'm trying to give. Getting the pen? Again, I will try to compile this. It's compiled successfully. And finally, now what I'm doing is I'm trying to execute. So before executing, I'm giving something like test here. If you observe carefully, after the name of the class name, I come up with the test here. So this test, we are going to call it as a command line parameter. So whenever I'm trying to give this particular test, now observe carefully. So now you can see, so T is missing here, but whatever I given T is, the same TS is printing. And now line number 3 is executed. So after the line number 3, what we added the one more println statement here, this one, test 0. Test 0, what exactly it is contains here? It contains here this particular TES. So if I'm going to run with the test here, the same test is printing. The same test is printing here. Getting the pen? So if I want to give any value from the command line as an input, or we can call it as a dynamic inputs. Getting the pen? So based on this particular dynamic inputs here, if we want to perform some other any operations here, now what is the best option? So we can use these parameters. So if we want to give two values, we want to give two values. So what is the another one? So we need to use, first one is a zero index location and second one is first index location. Why we need to give this 0 and 1? Because it's going to store multiple values, not a single value. Getting the point? So if you see, this println is going to store single value. This write method can hold only single value, but same way, so this particular string, it can hold multiple values, more than one value it can hold here. So the simple example, let me compile. So I will give as a test1 and test2. Now you can see test1 is printing, test2 is also printing. Getting the point? So we are giving the command line arguments like a dynamic inputs here. The dynamic inputs are moving into the our example and it is printing line number 4 and 5. Getting the point? So this is the purpose of this particular main method parameter. Okay. So any questions regarding this particular current example? Okay. So if not, we'll move on to the one more example here. So basically, to understand the one more example, what exactly we need to know. So before going to discuss about the one more example, what is the keywords I'm using? First keyword I'm using Java C. So basically, Java C, what it will do, it will try to compile our the example what we are trying to compile here. So and while providing this compilation phase, we should provide the file name here. We should provide the name of the file. So what is the name of the file we are having here? So I come up with the example.java. Example.java. So the file is compiled successfully. If you miss something, it will give an error inside the compilation phase. Like it's like most of the time it will give you an error if you miss any syntaxes here. Okay, and what about this? We are calling execution phase. So the first one is the compilation phase and second one is the execution phase. So inside the execution phase, I'm not using the Java C. I'm using only Java. So Java, and I'm giving name of the particular class name. Once you give this particular name of the class name, now what happens internally? We are providing some additional parameters, but here, so it will try to look up the name of the class, name of the particular class, and it will try to identify the main method, and inside the main method if you write something, the particular message are going to print here. So that is the simple message we are writing here. Okay, so this is the main example, and this is the basic example, and this is the one of the important one. If you are stuck here, you cannot write any simple example also. So this is the one is very important here. Okay, now I'm moving into the one more example. So if you see inside this particular main method, now what I'm doing is I'm trying to come up with a int num. So basically int is a one of the data type here. Int is the one of the data type here. It can hold number related values. Can hold number related values here. Okay, now what I'm doing here, so this is the data type I'm providing, and this is the variable name. So this is very important here. So wherever we are writing the data type we are sharing the information to the compiler. The number variable can hold integer related information, not other than this particular integer. So you cannot insert the boolean related, or you cannot come up with a string related, you cannot come up with a other data type here. So that is the purpose we are defining this particular data type called int. Wherever we are trying to defining the variable, we need to define the data type as well here. Okay, so again, this section we'll call it as a declaration. Declaration. So declarations versus initialization. So we need to understand the differences between these two. So declarations basically just we are declaring here the data type along with the name of the variable name. Just we are declaring the data type along with the variable name. Now, so initialization. Initialization is nothing but we are going to provide the values. So how I am going to provide the values? So if you see number is a variable and it can hold 100 value. Number is the variable name and it can hold the 100 value. Getting the point. So this is we'll call it as a initialization. Initialization can contain the value, declaration cannot contain the value. Getting the point. So this is very important because most of the time we are going to use declarations. Declaration we are going to use in the different location. Initialization we are going to use in the different location. So why we are going to use in the different location? Basically, because if I want to reuse the same variable name, the number, whatever the number I'm defining here, I want to reuse the same number for the multiple times and multiple location. Getting the point. So in that case, now what we can do, we need to declare in the common location. Getting the point. We need to declare in the common location. We need to use in the different location wherever it is required here. Okay. So we'll see. So what is the best way to declare the variable? But now understand this section will provide the declaration and this section will give you the initialization here. Okay. After this, now what I'm doing here. So again, I'm going to print this system.out. I'm trying to write the println statement here. So this println statement, so as I explained here, it is can expecting the string information. So the string here, we can come up with the message along with the value. Now, this is something like num. Num is nothing but our number. And now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to appending this. Appending is nothing but, so I'm trying to add one is a string here and another one is a number. So I'm trying to print both information in the one line, because so along with this particular value I want to see some message here. So this is a message we are providing, and after the message we are initializing the, like we are trying to print this particular number. What exactly the number is contained? The number can contain right now 100 value. Okay, so this is important, we need to understand here. Now I'm having, sorry, so number I'm having initializing like this. So where exactly the number is going to initialize? Where exactly number is going to initialize? Because this is the, this value is not going to initialize in the heap memory. This value is going to initialize in the stack memory. Why it is going to initialize in the stack memory? Basically, stack memory is a one thread of operation. One thread of operation is nothing but, so once this particular main method is completed, so we cannot access this particular number value. Getting the point? Once the main method is executed, we cannot access this. If we are trying to access outside of this particular main method, again we are going to get an error. But if we want to access outside of this particular main method, now what we can do? So we can move this particular the declaration section at class level. Getting the point? So we need to move the int number declaration at the class level. So we'll see how we can move at the class level. Right now, just we'll focus on the method level information. So once we familiar with the method level, we can move on to the class level. Okay, now number is having 100. So once it is having 100, now what I'm doing is I'm trying to, so I'm trying to modifying the value. How I'm trying to modify the value? If you observe carefully, num is equals to num multiplication of this particular 2. So if we observe carefully, what I'm doing is, what is the value we are having? Number is having 100. 100 we are trying to multiply with the 2, and whatever the result we are getting. So the whatever the result we are getting, the result we are trying to store into left side variable. So what is the left side variable we are having here? Again, we are having the same variable name called number. So this is very important here. So whenever we are using this single equals here, the right side value we are going to store into the left side. But whenever we are trying to use this particular double equals operator, so we are going to compile the left side value with the right side. Just we are comparing whether the two values are equal or not. But only one equal, the right side value will store into the left side variable something. So here whatever it is, the right side value, it's going to move on to the left side, whether it is a variable you are going to declare or you are going to come with the different things. Okay, so imagine this. So the result, what is the result we are going to get? We are going to get 200. The 200, now what happening internally, we are storing into this particular number. And initially, what is the number we are having? Number we are having with 100. Now it is become 200. Getting the point? So it's overriding with the latest value here. It's overriding with the latest value. So now what I'm doing here, I'm going to print this. I'm going to print this particular number 2. So number 2, how I'm trying to print? Here I'm trying to print. So the value of number, the value of number, how we can write? Because we are trying to multiply something. So once we multiplied here, we are going to print the same number. Okay, so this is the same example we are going to use, and let me compile this. Before compiling, I want to clear uh, console here. It's compiled successfully, and here any parameters we are providing? No. So in that case, directly we can run Java example. Observe carefully. Initially it is having 100, and later it is multiplied with the 2. So the result we are getting as a 200. This is very important here. Whenever we are trying to use the same variable name, now what happens internally? It's going to override with the previous value with the current value. Getting the point? So this is the way the values are going to change. Okay. Any questions?
So when you modified the number value, like you wrote num is equal to num into 2. So after that, whenever we are using the num, so it will be 200, not 100, because we already increased that num value. Before it was 100.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Okay. So now we need one of the important concept called control statements here. Basically, the control statements is nothing but some mathematical basic example we already identified here. It's like a less than and greater than and so as I explained here, double equals here. Basically, this is we'll call it as a equals to. So just for understanding, I'm calling as a double equal. Okay. So how these three how how these three control statements are going to work. Getting the point. So less than and greater than and double equals. So we have a simple example on this. We will understand here how this particular less than, greater than and double equals will work here. So I'm trying to use the same class, or we can go for the another one. Mm. Observe here now what I'm doing here. So if sample, I come up with a name of the class called if sample, and internally what I'm doing here, I'm trying to use same main method here. So you can come up with anything here, something like any naming convention is so variable names we can give any name other than this particular keywords. So because we cannot give string as a different name, because string is a one data type, so we cannot modify this. Only we can modify here. So args, basically args is the variable name. Whatever you are interested, you can give. Whatever you are interested, you can give. Whatever you are giving the name, it should not contain the data types as well as keywords here. Okay, so this is the keyword, this is also keyword, void also one of the keyword. And now what I'm doing here, inside this particular main method, I'm having int x comma y. So how many variables I'm defining here? Two variables I'm defining. What are the two variables here? X comma y. And now if you see x value, how much I'm giving? 10. And what about this particular high y value? I'm giving as a 20. Getting the point. So y value I'm giving as a 20. So whenever I'm giving this particular y value as a 20, observe carefully. So this is the first keyword we are using, that is called if. Getting the point. If. So first we need to understand the syntax here. Basically, whenever we are trying to use this particular if is a one keyword, and if you write any condition inside this, getting the point. Inside this, if you write any condition, if the condition is written is true, if this particular condition returns true, what happens here? So the below statements are going to execute. Getting the point. So whatever the condition, if it is returning true, it will try to execute the below statements. If the condition return is false here, it will not execute the below statements here. Okay, so simple understanding here. Now what I'm doing here I'm trying to write x. So here, what is the condition I'm trying to write? Observe carefully. The condition x less than y. X less than y. Okay, so basically this is the basic the operation we are using, something like less than. So whether you can think and let me know x less than y, the condition, whatever the condition we are writing this, it's going to return true or false. So before going to explain true or false, so when we can go for the less than and when we can use the greater than, this is important here. So basically, if this particular value, something like x value is less than to this particular y, like is smaller to this particular y, we can use. And same way, if this particular x is bigger to this particular y, we can go for the greater than. If in this case, here x value is the smaller value, and here x value is the bigger value. Just we want to check whether the x value is a bigger value or not compared to this particular y. Now what we can do, we can move on to the greater than operator. And what about this particular less than? If I want to compare x value is a smaller value or not compared to this particular y. So in that case, we can go for the less than operator. Now, if the x value is smaller, now what happens internally? It will return this true. If the x value is bigger, it will return true. Otherwise, it will return in the both cases as a false. Getting the point? So the less than and greater than and double equals operator. These three operators will return true or false, not the original value. Just we are comparing the value. If the compared value based on the condition, the compared value satisfied, it will return true. Otherwise, it will return false. Okay. So now observe x less than y. X value is how much we are having 10. And what about the y value? Y value 10. So here x value is a smaller to this particular y. X value is the smaller to this particular y. If it is the smaller to y, so we can know the condition is satisfied. And now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to write the println statements here. System dot out dot println. So now you can see here what I'm doing here, and whatever the message you want to write, you can write here. So something like x is less than y. X is less than y. So and here what I want to provide here, so if you are having only one line of statement, this is also important. Whenever you're having one line of statements here, either beside this particular condition you can write, or below also you can write. Below also you can write, but more than one statement we are having. Whenever we are having the more than one statement, you cannot write like this. This applicable only one line of statement here. Getting the point? So this is also one of the syntax we need to follow here. Whenever we are having multiple lines here, what we can do, we need to come up with the curly brace and enable the curly brace and try to define the code inside this particular condition here. Okay, so right now we don't have much code, just we are having single line. I'm trying to write like this. And one more condition. Now you can see x is equals to x multiplied with 2. X is equals to x multiplied with 2. And now again I'm trying to write the if condition. If, so again what I'm doing here, again I'm checking the condition. So what is the condition we can check here? And here I'm checking the condition f equals to y. In the one x equals to y. And here whenever I'm adding this particular double equals operator, now what happens internally, it will compare left side value with the right side value. If the both values are equal, both the values are same, now this particular expression will return true. So this will call it as a, this particular condition we can call it as a expression. If the expression, if it is written true, the entire condition, whatever the if condition are returning, it's true. Okay, now if it is returns true, now what happens internally? So again this statement will execute. This statement will execute. Otherwise, whatever the statement we are writing now, this statement will not execute. X now equals to y. In the point. So this is the one more condition, and one more condition I want to write here. So here two operators we are using. First one is a less than, and second one is a greater than. Sorry, second one is a double equals operator, and third one we are going to use greater than operator. Again, to understand the greater than operator, now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to multiply with x is equals to x multiply with 2. So this is very important here. If you observe carefully, the x values modifying multiple times. So initially some value we defined here, but whenever we are trying to do the operation, we are trying to modifying the x value multiple times here. And once we modify this, again I'm trying to write the condition and x greater than y. Getting the point? X greater than y. If the x value is bigger than this particular y, and now what happens here? The condition will return satisfied, and system dot out dot println, and this particular statement is going to execute. Otherwise, this particular statement is not going to execute. So x now greater than y. So these are all the three if conditions I'm adding here. These are all the three if conditions I'm adding. And now the final one. So if you observe, again I'm trying to check here, x equals to y. x equals to y, and I'm trying to print this system dot out dot println. So what is the message we can write? Basically, the line number 12, whatever the line number 12 we are trying to write here, this statement is going to execute or not. So whatever the line we are writing, this statement is not going to execute here. Getting the point? So basically, so what we can write, we won't see this line. Okay, so this is the one of the important example with if some condition. If the condition is satisfied, we are going to print this. Otherwise, it will check this, and again it will check. And as I explained here, Java is going to execute line by line. So it will declare this the line number 3, and later it will move on to the 4, 5, something like it keep on executing this. So let me save this particular file, if sample, and where we are saving inside the D directory. So we have a one folder called Java training and if sample. Getting the point. Now I will try to compile this. Java C sample dot Java. So what happens here? Something we are missing some syntax here. Illegal state of expression line number. You can see line number 7. What is the name of the file we are having? Something like if sample. This is the file name. The line number 7 we are getting an error. So we'll go to the line number 7. You can see, so we are trying to multiply with the which value. Getting the point. So we mess some like a variable name here. So we need to multiply x is equals to x multiplied with this particular 2. Okay, now save again, compile one more time. Now what happens internally? So one more, some error we are getting. One more error we are getting. So what is the one more error here? Observe carefully. So system dot, we are missing something. We are missing some information here. So cannot find the symbol. Getting the point. Inside this particular system class, we don't have a OU. We have a OUT. We have a out variable, not the OU. Getting the point. So compiler cannot understand here where we are coming with this OU here. Okay. In the which line number it is? It is the line number 10 and the same file name if sample.java. We'll go to the line number 10. Now you can see here. Okay. So this is a way, if you miss any syntaxes here, it will give you the at compilation phase. Now compile here. It's compiled successfully. Now once it is compiled here, now what we can do, we'll try to run the same example. Now you can see how many the condition statements are executed. How many the condition statements are executed here. So first one is less than, second one is equal, and third one is greater than. And what about this particular last statement here? So it is not executing. Why it is not executing here? Because x value is a bigger value compared to this particular y. Why it is a bigger? Because we are trying to multiplying 2 times here. We are trying to multiplying, this is the 2 times. So whenever we are trying to multiply 2 times here, so these two values are not equal here. Getting the point. So this is the way we can come up with the condition, and if the condition is satisfied, we can write the print statements like this. Instead of print, if you are trying to do some other operations, we can write here. Okay. So just understanding, I'm writing the print statements. So any questions? Anyone having any question? Okay, so if not, basically this is the simple example we are understanding on the if, because in the like upcoming classes we are going to discuss much regarding this particular if. We are going to come up with the else if, and else if something we are going to come up with the else. So this section we discuss in the upcoming classes, and now I'm moving into the one of the another important call loop section here. So basically here we are having one value, we can happily printing the one value. But whenever we are having multiple values, Getting the point? So when we are having more than one value, in that case, how we are going to print here? Getting the point? In that case, how we are going to print? So that is also very important. We need to understand here. Okay. So let me come up with a simple example on the loop section here. So to understand this particular loop section, now what we need to understand here, first we need to understand the syntax. The syntax I'm going to write here. This is the keyword. Getting the point? So this is the keyword we are having. Inside this particular keyword, so we have a different stages. So we need to come up with the different stages. Like first one is initializing. The initializing we already familiar with the previous example. Okay, and initializing. So second one condition. Condition, just now we identify the condition. So condition is nothing but the line number 6 and line number 8 and line number 10. These are all the conditions here. Getting the pen. So these are all the conditions we identify. And another one, we are going to come up with the iteration here. So this we need to understand the iteration. So this is very important, the iteration here. So right now, how we are going to write this particular iteration here. So observe here only I'm going to write this particular for loop here. And to understand this particular for loop, what we can do here, okay, this is, I want to comment out. So int, yeah, green pen. So a is one more variable name I'm trying to declare here. So right now, so a does not initialize here. And where I'm trying to initializing this, so you can see a is equals to something like 0. Green the pen. The first section is completed or not. So what is the first section we define here? Initialization. So we are initializing the value. What is the value we are initializing? It's starting with 0. Getting the point? It's starting with 0. Now what happens internally? So once this particular initialization is completed, so what we need? We need to come up with the comma, and now we need to check the condition. So what is the condition? Condition I'm making here, if you see a less than 10. A less than 10. So observe carefully. Again, we are coming with the less than operator. Now we can think here how this less than operator is important. Not only the less than, so it is important greater than and to less than. So whenever we are trying to come up with this particular loops related section here, we are going to use most of the time this less than and to greater than here. Okay, a less than 10. Now, so once we complete this particular condition, what is the another one? And what is another one? So we need to come up with a iteration. So iteration basically we are trying to increment the value. We are trying to increment the value. So what is the value we need to increment here? So basically, so question here, if I want to satisfy this particular condition, if I want to satisfy this particular condition, what is the value I want to increment here? So could you please think and let me know what is the value we need to increment here?
We are incrementing A
Okay. So any idea like how we can increment the A value?
with add.
We
A
have to
plus
write an
plus.
A plus plus.
Okay. So basically, before going to discuss about the a plus plus, now if you see x is equals to x multiply 2. Now what we are doing here, this is the x original value we are having. With help of this particular original value, we are multiplying with the 2, and again the same value we are trying to store into the same x. And the same way, now what I'm doing here, a is equals to a plus 1. Getting the point? A is equals to a plus plus. So we'll discuss about the plus plus operator and minus minus like increment and decrement operator in our upcoming classes. But just understanding it because we already familiar with the multiplication. So same way I'm trying to declare with the addition here. So a is equals to a plus 1. And now what I'm doing is, so once this particular initialization, condition and iteration is completed, so I'm not going to write much code here. System dot out dot println, and here I'm going to print here a value. Okay, so this is the a value I want to print. So if you see, so here This line of statement here also we can write, and here also we can write. In the two cases we can write, but only the thing we need to understand. So whenever we are having only one line of statements here, one line of statement we can come up with after the loop, or after this particular, like the next to the condition or anything. What happened here? So observe carefully. So what we are missing here? So you can see cannot not a statement here. So why it is not a statement here? What we are missing here? So a is equals to a plus 1. You can see. So a less than 10, and system dot out dot println, what we are missing? Semicolon is expecting. Anything? I think compile one more time. Wrong, 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 wrong. Yeah. Defining this is less than 10, a plus plus.
I think we need to keep a semicolon.
Yeah, semicolon instead of a comma after the initialization conditional
Yes,
exists.
yes. So mess this. Now you can see. Now you can say hits compile successfully, and it's executing. So 0 to 9. Getting the point. So this is nothing but we have a 10 values. We are trying to print one by one. How we are printing here? With the help of this particular loop, that is we are going to call it as a for loop, and for loop is expecting. So these are all the three statements we need to provide: initialization, condition, and iteration. Getting the point. So once we are familiar with this, we can write either, or you can write comma with here also. So there is no problem if you are trying to write in the both cases, but only the problem when we are having multiple statements here. So we should come up with the curly braces and we can define the values. Now you can see, so it's also executing. Okay, so this is all about the for loop here. And now what we will do, so as I explained here, when we are having multiple lines of code here, we can come up with the braces like this. So we can write multiple statements here, and you can close, but only if it is a single line. Without writing these curly braces also we can execute here. So this is I want to execute. So right now what I'm doing here, so for understanding two cases, here I'm going to write a comma b. So I'm defining a comma b. So a value we are initializing, and now the b value, what we can do here, only I want to initialize the b value as a 20, and I want to print b. Here also I want to print b, and b is equals to b minus 2. Okay, so this is the statement I'm trying to write end of this particular loop. B is equals to b minus 2. I'm trying to subtract the value from the b, and compile one more time and execute. Now you can see, so a and b values we are getting. So a value 0, b value 20, a value 1, b value 18, something like ab, something we are getting all the values here. Getting the point. So this is a way we can come up with multiple statements here. So here how many statements I'm trying to write? Three statements. Now what happens internally if I'm removing this? So observe carefully the output here. Compile one more time and execute. So see the difference here, the earlier output and current output here. Now you can see the earlier output, how many lines of statement we are printing, and right now you can see these are all the multiple statements we printed with help of the like curly braces here. And now you can see this, but if you observe carefully, only a value is printing 0 to 9. At the end here, only the b values we are getting as a 20, but here you can see a into b value we are getting. So this is we need to understand the particular example with curly braces and without the curly braces here. Okay, this is also very important. If you miss the curly brace also, whatever the expected result you are expecting, we are not going to get here. Okay, so this is all about our today's example. We'll try to continue tomorrow with new information. And before going to start, I will provide the different kinds of symbol and different kinds of keywords we are having. And later we'll start with data types here. What are all the different data types we are having and how we can come up with each data type, and so variable creations, variable declaration, and arrays concepts here. So these are all the three important sections we are going to discuss in our tomorrow session. So, and anyone having any questions regarding today's session, please let me know. Okay. So if we don't have anything, we'll continue tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks for the session.
Thank
Thank you.